So the 5 biggest mistakes of our career?
I wouldn't say biggest because it would take me time to think about them. Moderately to large. I don't know if I can categorize the biggest, but I mean, I have a backlog and I could have been bitter for the rest of my life, or I could have distrusted leaders for the rest of my life. It would have been very easy to go there. So I worked hard to not let that one event define me. Maybe it's the better way to put it. Not that let that bad event. And it really wanted to define me because of my personality and my style.
And that's all we needed to do. I didn't need to force people to operate. I didn't force them to be carbon copies of the way we did, because what worked for us worked for us. That didn't mean it was going to work for everybody else.
I was very opinionated about what good code looked like, what good design looked like, what good architecture looked like. And I was not shy about sharing that with everyone around me and dictating, the Bob methodology to everyone. It even got so bad that during the nights, I would change people's code if it didn't conform to my style. Entry music, da 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 da. Dun, 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 dun. It's the Bob and Josh show.
Mistakes. I've made a couple. Bob's made a lot. We're gonna talk about them today.
Thank you, Josh.
You're welcome. I'm very happy with that.
I mean, sad but true. Yeah. So Metacasters, we're going to explore our mistakes. Sir, in my case, not all of them. I have to be selective. And big ones, small ones, medium-sized ones. Right.
Oh, I tried for the big screw ups. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's okay.
Well, all of these are. Do you want me to go first, Josh, or do you want to go?
Well, yeah, because I know you have more. Not because you've screwed up more, but just you've had more time.
A boss. Years ago, I was working at EMC. Dell purchased them. Network Appliance, if you've heard, they work in that space. And I was it EMC? No, it was Bell. I'm sorry, but it doesn't matter. But Bell and Howell mail processing equipment, and they hired a brand new VP that I reported to. His name was John Balga, and John was an ass, and I didn't really get along with him very well. Right. So if you've ever reported to an ass, right, you can. I mean, he was driven. He was sort of ego driven. It's about himself. He was very political, all about him, etc. But I trusted him that he would, because I mirrored myself onto him, or I reflected myself onto him, and I'm like, he can be an asshole, but he's going to have my back. He can be an asshole, and he's going to, if I do good work, he's going to represent that, et cetera, et cetera. So I was a senior director reporting to John as a VP or whatever. So hierarchically, I was a leader of a pretty large group, and, John had a lot of purview. And one day he fired me, and he was backstabbing me, pulled me into HR. He blamed all kinds of things on me, et cetera, et cetera. And so it was a mistake of trust. It was a mistake of maybe, mirroring me or translate my values, not all of my values, but some of my values onto someone else. And to this day, it really bothers me that he stabbed me in the back, threw me under the bus, terminated me. I had to say goodbye to people that I really cared about in the team. Josh knows this, I put all of myself into my leadership, like every ounce of myself. Maybe that's a mistake too.
Right.
And the only saving grace, everyone, is like a month or two later, I heard through the grapevine that John was stealing equipment from Bell and Howell. He was redirecting hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment to his house. And they did an inventory of his house, and they caught him. But to end this story, and I'm already gone, so they fired him, but they didn't press charges because a lot of times in companies, they're embarrassed by the fact that they had no controls.
Right.
So they didn't take him up, they sort of shoved it, even though he was an asshole and a thief and a liar, nothing ever happened to him. And I don't know if John, he might be working to this day. I have no idea. But I was bitter about that. I was bitter about my not having deflector screens up. and not doing a better job of defending myself.
So how did you how did that fundamentally alter the way you operate? Like you just like now,
I
like I can imagine myself, I would go to the other end of the spectrum and not trust anybody.
I don't
How did
I
you
didn't
manage
I
that?
didn't do that. Well, I sort of did that right afterwards. I was jaded for a while. I was balged. The
Yeah.
reason, right? I was balgified for a while, but then actually, for lucky for me, Josh, then I got a good boss
Hmm.
afterwards. Steve Healy. So on my good boss side of the equation was someone that I reported to for a while, and I think Steve helped me heal and to trust
Right.
and to see through. You know what it is? One of the things I learned, Josh, is to not let a bad event jade you for everything else. And I could have been bitter for the rest of my life, or I could have distrusted leaders for the rest of my life. It would have been very easy to go there. So I worked hard to not let that one event define me. Maybe it's the better way to put it. Not that let that bad event, and it wanted to. It really wanted to define me because of my personality and my style. So it changed me. It changed me to be a little bit more reserved. It changed me to really value the good ones. So, John, if Medications, you've heard me talk maybe about the spectrum of leaders. There's terrible ones, there's mediocre ones, and there's great ones. And so, value the great ones. But I think another lesson is don't let the terrible ones, uh, do damage to you. Right? There's that trauma. There's a term, like don't let the trauma define you. And John created trauma in me.
Gotcha. Well, okay, cool. All right. So my first one, chronologically speaking, was I hired myself and I did it repeatedly. And surprise, surprise, we kept finding ourselves stuck because we didn't know how to do anything other than what the other people knew. And so this created a situation where we had some scaling issues, different challenges like that. We all had similar blind spots. So we all thought we were good. But again, because we all had similar experiences, similar backgrounds, we just didn't know what we didn't know. And so that's where I learned the term of the unknown unknowns. And so my response to that was after a handful of issues where we had scaling issues with the software, also just some quality issues with our product. I learned to hire in an aggressively um, diverse way, because what I realized the big lesson for me was the unknowns that we didn't even know existed because our experiences were all in the same lane. So I said, holy cow, I have got to fix this. So what I tried to do was hire additional people that could help me discover the unknowns that were lurking out there that I had no idea
Yeah.
of, because those were the big issues. Those were the things that once we understood what the problems were, once we knew that they were there, we had the capabilities to go solve that. And so the biggest issue that I had was just being fully thoughtful about all of the challenges that were out there. And it was impossible for us as a group of similar age, similar experience, similar um, training, all of that stuff. We were good in our lane, but as soon as I got out of our lane, it got pretty sketchy. So what I tried to do was really build a bunch of lanes, find a bunch of people that knew a bunch of lanes, and then we had a lot of things covered. And that was rough. That was a challenging period. That was a challenging thing for me to figure out and to realize, gosh, you really, to use a Bobism, you really screwed the pooch here. Right? You just hired the same person over and over. And the thing was, as I look back and a handful of these items that I'm going to talk about, it really got into, I'm going to label it lazy, right? Like I took the easy way out. It was easy for me to hire copies of myself. It was easy for me to validate that. It was easy for me to figure that out. And there was some additional work that I had to do. And every time I get out of these situations, it took me really digging my heels in and doing additional work to do the hard things that I avoided. So that's a relatively common theme in some of the challenges that I've learned throughout the years that has just become a common theme where if I recognize something's going to be hard, then I lean into it because of the number of times I'm like, ooh, yeah, that's going to be challenging. That's going to be difficult. Why don't we just pretend it's not there?
Yeah,
Every time I've done that, even a little bit is blown up in my face. So now, whenever there's something that looks challenging or sounds scary, I'm like, okay, here we go. We got to go figure this out.
absolutely. I mean, another one for me, and there's some integration in these themes and in these mistakes, is what I'll call command and control Bob. So I think I was declared a manager around 1986 or so, 86 or 7. I was promoted to be as a manager, a software development team manager, small team. And then my management career, that was the start of my management career. So what is that, like 30 years ago, Josh? 40 years ago, something like that?
40.
40, 40 years ago. And in the beginning, I was a perfectionist, and I was a perfectionist developer. I was very opinionated about what good code looked like, what good design looked like, what good architecture looked like. And I was not shy about sharing that with everyone around me and dictating, the Bob methodology to everyone. It even got so bad that during the nights I would change people's code if it didn't conform to my style. I would go in the evenings and check their code out and check it in and Bobify it. And I'm not joking. And I'm not, that's not pride in my voice. That is sorrow that I was like that. And so that was a mistake. That was a huge, now I didn't know better. I didn't have good role models. Back then everyone was a command control
Right.
manager, but that was no excuse. Probably 5 years. It took me 5 years. So there was not one event that changed me, and it wasn't Agile that changed me. This was pre-Agile, but something changed me that I became a human again. I don't know. I don't know what it was. I was an asshole. I was, and I was demanding. If that I mean, I was demanding of people. Like, I was a workaholic, so I demanded that people
Yeah.
be workaholics,
Well,
right?
and not as an excuse, but to your point, 40 years ago, that was what management was,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Again, not an excuse. You navigated your way out of it, but
It was a mistake, though.
yeah.
Now I see people that are doing some of that, maybe not as extreme as I was, still to this day. That was a mistake. And as I pivoted, and I've been pivoting from that ever since. So I've been evolving as a leader, because I don't think it's a switch. I think it's an evolution where
Mhm.
you're constantly sort of changing and changing your style. But that mistake was the trigger for me. And I look back on that not with fun, as I look back on that with horror, but then it's motivation for me. It's like, I don't want to be that way again. I don't want to, you were that way at one point, etc. And how do you evolve from that? How do you change? How did it make you feel when people were treating you like that? Is another motivation for me,
Right.
right? How does that make you feel when someone micromanages you and it feels like shit? And
Mhm.
you all know that, right? It's terrible. And it doesn't activate any of your energy, any of your creativity as a developer. And at the end of the day, to me, developers are creatives. We're artists, whether people like it or not. You're artists, you're creatives, you're innovators, or most of us want to be until it's dragged out of us, right? So that was my mistake. I call it command and control Bob.
Yeah. I have heard stories of that person.
He was an ass.
Horror stories.
He was an asshole.
Yeah.
He really
Yeah.
was.
Well, it's good that you've evolved past that. But yes. So I've got something that aligns with that pretty similarly. In the previous episode, we talked about one of the larger mistakes I made where the bandwagon that I created at the dude and the dude way and everything. And we really believed in everything that we were doing. And we were getting great feedback. The companies were flying in from Europe to observe our patterns and practices and the way we were building software. So we were getting all of this validation, not only from ourselves, but from, across the space. So we were pretty proud of what we had built, and it worked great for us. And then we began acquiring companies. And as the leader of technology, it was my job to get everybody kind of up to snuff, and working the way that we were working. So I was so proud of this monster that we had built, that I walked into every company and I fundamentally changed the way that they were working, because I knew that what we had built for us was the way. This was the dude way. You are now part of the dude. So now this is how you're going to do your work. This is what you're going to do. This is the way it's going to work. And it's going to be fantastic. We're going to make your life better than you could ever imagine, because look at all this success that we have. That blew up horribly. I crushed teams. Motivation was gone. Productivity was gone. It was just a total disaster. And everything came to a screeching halt. And I remember the moment when I realized, you idiot, what have you done? Everything you fought to create, everything that when you had this opportunity, that you had the chance to create this pattern and process and all these procedures in the way that suited you best. And you have these additional group of wonderful people that were highly successful. They were obviously successful. They were able to sell their companies and their products, and you decided to squash it. So number one, I had to, eat crow, as they say, and I went and apologized to every product that we had and every team that we had, and I said, okay, here's what I've realized. Number one, I've realized that I've screwed up. But what we do need, the one thing that we do need, is we need to define a protocol for how we as products under one umbrella share the context and direction of what we're building, about when it's going to happen, what it looks like. And so that's all that we developed. We developed a communication protocol that here at the Dude, if you're building products, you need to communicate in this way consistently to the rest of the organization. Because what I had learned was it was important for the rest of the organization to have clarity on what is being built, what isn't being built, and about when it's going to happen, and do that on a regular basis. How those teams chose to operate under the covers and to deliver on those protocols didn't matter. If they wanted to do Scrum, if they wanted to do Kanban, if they wanted to do Waterfall, it didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was that we consistently and clearly communicated across the organization of, this is what's happening, this is what's going to happen, and sometimes more importantly, this is what's not going to happen. And that's all we needed to do. I didn't need to force people to operate. I didn't force them to be carbon copies of the way we did, because what worked for us worked for us. That didn't mean it was going to work for everybody else. So that was a huge lesson in my life in a bunch of different directions. Number one, understanding as a leader what my job really was. My job wasn't to force people into a process. My job was to make sure that we created the context and clarity, both internally within my organization, but externally within people across the company that needed the information that we had. And that was it. And I needed to back off and let people be great. So that was a fundamental change. That was a tough lesson. Boy, oh boy. But yeah, happy I learned it.
Did the work suffer? And what I mean by that, so I think of like Elon Musk has a way of working, and it's non-negotiable, Josh, to some degree, right? Let's define the Elon way. And so he just forces that on people. Now, arguably, he's successful with it, right? So he drives business success. There just may be people fallout resulting from that. So did you not have success? So what drew you to recognize that? Was it the lack of success, or was it the impact to the people, or both?
There was both. Certainly the thing that drove me, or that hit me the deepest, was the effect on the people. Was I saw frustration. I saw people doing their darndest, trying to work the way that I was not the way that I was asking, the way I was telling them to work. And they were fantastic sports. They did everything they could. But I saw like souls slowly being crushed, and realizing that I did that. Now, if productivity went down as well, because if you can imagine working in an environment like that, like, you're not going to be as productive and as enthusiastic to take on some of those big challenges that you're being asked to do. So it was definitely a combination of the two, but the thing that hit me the deepest, because of how I prefer to lead, was the challenge that I was creating for those really good people.
That's what I would guess with you.
Yeah.
And not everyone would see that as a mistake. too, because they might not be on the people-centric side of things.
Mm.
So I was just, it's interesting, but both sides matter.
Yep.
For me, another one for me, I'm trying to pick from my list, everyone. And which one do I want to go? Maybe I'll go here. This is where Josh has helped me with this. I undervalue a mistake I've made, and I'm still making it. And he's smirking. I can see the smirk. I told you so. Right. So, but is I undervalue myself. And Josh has improved me. So maybe on the undervaluometer, I'm maybe halfway to 3/4 of the way towards improvement. So historically, I've undervalued my worth. I've undervalued my impact. As a consultant, I've lowballed myself on charging money, charging rates, etc. And this isn't ego; it's sort of intentional, but I've learned that it was a mistake. That it was setting a tone. I think one aspect of the mistake is people value, that what you charge drives your value,
Right.
and so people would sort of handle me flippantly, or they'd handle me as a commodity, or they'd look at me as a commodity, and I'm not a commodity. I'm a fairly experienced coach. So that undervaluing has really been, but both as on the permanent side of jobs and as a consultant, is something I'm working on. As I'm a work in progress. I do think a lot of people fall into one category or the other. They're either on the high side or they're on the low side. There's a lot of people like me that I meet as consultants. They bounce their pay rates and things like that off of me, and particularly consultants that are just getting into the business, and they don't value themselves. And then there are folks who consistently value themselves at the high end of the range, like that gentleman. Well,
Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So I'm learning, but how you even if I'm an employee, you should be thinking about my salary. You should be thinking about market value. You should be thinking about that, and you should be driving that because it matters. An equivalent thing would be, you ever hear people talk about seat at the table, right? It's like if you have a seat at the leadership table or not. You may have a title, a VP title, but you don't have a seat at the leadership table, or you have half a seat. And you might talk yourself into, oh, it doesn't matter. I have this. No, it does matter. Having a seat at the table matters. And are you getting paid to your value matters. And that's something I think I've learned the lesson, and I'm working, but it's a work in progress for me.
Yeah. One of the core beliefs that I have, which drives me in an opposite direction of Bob, but we're a good balancing act for each other in this space, is that I have learned that no one will care about your pay and your career growth more than you. So if you're waiting for somebody else to make it happen, you're going to be waiting for a long time.
Exactly.
You are going to have to grab the reins, grab the wheel, whatever visual you want, and you have to take it in that direction. And so going back to, there are distinct moments throughout my career, and I remember the moment when I got an invoice and I said, I've got to call Bob. So I was working at, I think it was at Teradata still, and we had hired Bob for something else. Bob had left, but we hired him back to do some coaching for some things, and I had to pay that bill. So I knew what Bob's rate was. Then I had a team in a different country, and I needed to hire somebody to do something similar. And so I found a local person, because it was important to have a local person, because I needed them there because I wasn't there. So I was hiring them to come in and help for a period of time. And I remember getting the invoice, and I was like, holy shit, I got to call Bob. Like, Bob, you are so much better than this person. They are charging so much more than you. Like, you have got to update your rates. And I can remember the conversation, like, well, I don't know. It was all this hemming and hawing, all these different things. They're like, no, Bob, like, I have evidence here. Like, this person is charging this much more than you. And I can tell you, he's good. He's not as good as you, but he's not the, you need to charge some more. It's like, oh, well, I don't know, Josh, that's a different country. That's a blah, blah, blah.
I remember the conference. I even know who, I think I recall who you're talking about. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But again, everyone, it's not about Josh and I or, one way or the other. It's your value. I think a lot of us make mistakes on our value, and really revisit your value. And to Josh's point, fight for your value.
Yep.
And put the cherry on top of this one. It does prove that I am teachable or coachable,
Yes.
at least occasionally. Josh,
Yes.
what do you got?
So next one, I created what I called an isolationary culture. So this happened a couple of times in my career where I was working we'll just use these labels, in a non-agile organization, but I was building a very agile organization. And so the conflict that was created there, where my team was operating one way, but it was very different from the rest of the organization. And there were all these internal conflicts where my team wasn't sure how to handle things because we were doing things a certain way, but the rest of the organization was doing things a different way. It's like, well, what? But they're over there saying we should operate like this, Josh, and you're saying we should work like this. Like, what are you doing? Like, just trust me. We'll just it's fine. So I became the umbrella where I was protecting everybody, doing everything with that. And that was a constant battle. And it created friction across the company because we were doing things differently. People thought we were better than them or different. We were different than them. Good, bad, or indifferent. I guess that's the wrong saying that we were different. But again, going back to the thing that I was avoiding the hard work of trying to transform the entire org. I felt like, hey, cool. If I just take care of my business and we just do our thing, we're good. And I didn't understand or fully value the importance of the entire system being healthy. And I wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared. I wasn't whatever to go and tackle the rest of the company and try and drive the transformation across the board to really make that happen. And that created challenges in multiple ways that I talked about. So what I learned and the change that I made coming out of that was I understood the responsibility that I had as a leader within the organization, not only just a leader within my department. That's why I had this very compartmentalized view of, hey, just us, like we're going to do our thing, we're going to be great, and it's going to be amazing. And all this other noise is out there. It's just, don't worry about it. It's not going to affect us. It does affect us.
Yeah.
And so I had to put my big boy pants on and start like learning how to coaching up like that. There was again, another moment. I don't remember the exact year, but I remember talking to Bob and saying, Bob, I've got to learn how to coach up. I am not good at that. And so I spent an entire year practicing on how I could coach up and drive change across the organization so that the entire system got better, not just my little piece of the pie. Because yeah, sure, it was cool that I had fixed that, but it still was in conflict in a lot of different ways. So that's where I had to really get better. And I invested. There was a year where that was like the one thing that I was focused on, but it was another 4 or 5 years where I needed to continue to refine that skill to learn how to effectively drive change across the organization where it wasn't my responsibility. It wasn't my job to go solve that, but to learn how to influence change across the organization. And that was, again, a very intense 12 months followed by 4 or 5 years on top of that to continue to refine it. And I can tell you, I'm not perfect at it. I'm still working at it. That's a challenge I think will always be out there.
I have one similar to that, Josh, but I'm going to go to another one. Another big mistake I've made, and I think I've overcome this completely or almost completely, is thinking everyone is like me. So early in my leadership career, it and I don't mean this. It's hard to describe, but if I'm driven, I think everyone's driven.
Right.
Right. If I am anti-work-life balance or pro or some way in between, then everyone is doing that. Value properly. What motivates people? What motivates me? And I would project that as a leader on everyone else. And that's a huge mistake. Right. That's meeting everyone. You're looking in the mirror and you're seeing, it goes back to almost what Josh was saying about hiring clones. Uh, but even if you hire clones, they're not like you.
Mm-hmm.
They may look like you, but they're not. They may be dressed like you. They may have dark glasses like Josh and wear a hat, but inside they're not this. They're not the same. We're all different. And when I started meeting people where they are, started, instead of assuming, started being curious, started really talking to people and understanding what drives them and understanding. And this would start in the interview process. This actually this was not in the job. This was before, if I was hiring them. This was during the interview process. If I was taking over a new group, it would be part of the assimilation process or the integration process. But really trying my absolute best to, if you've met one engineer, you've met one engineer.
Yeah.
Right. If you've met one tester, you've only met one tester. If you met one UX person, you've only met one product. And these labels, I would get into this trap of, oh, product owners, we need to run a product owner class. So that, we have 20 product owners in a class. And I would stereotype them. No, they're not that way. So that was a big mistake. And it was really imaging myself and really just bringing Bob down and just sort of being curious to folks. Another, I think, an important part of my evolution was really understanding Bob better. Was a part. So really coming to grips with Bob. Who is he? Who is he not? So there's an inside out flavor to my evolution that I'm trying to share with you Metacasters. But don't treat, I think if there's a quote, if you've met, and I learned this with folks, like if you've had bipolar or neurodiversity, or my wife has Parkinson's, if you've met one person, everyone thinks that, oh, Michael J. Fox Parkinson's. I know what Parkinson's is. You have no freaking clue. If you've met Michael J. Fox, that's one variant. Don't be presumptuous. Be curious about every other person you meet, because it's all different. And human beings are the same way.
Yeah, I echo that. I had similar lessons along the way that learning. And the key point that I want to drive is that, like Bob, what unlocked things for me and understanding others was beginning to understand the things that drove me. I didn't know, like I was just doing stuff. And then I started uncover and unpack, like, okay, so why am I doing this? Why is it important to me? And then realizing that the things that were important to me that I valued wouldn't align with what everybody else had. But I just assumed, because I never really inspected myself and understood my drivers. So that was also a huge moment for me as well. So that's definitely, again, to use a Bobism, that's a yes and for sure. Okay, last one for me. I have a history of being
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
I do. Of being too early and not recognizing that I am early. And sometimes I would get frustrated with why adoption wasn't as broad as I thought it should be.
Oh, I've seen this. Oh.
Yes. So there have been a handful of situations across the board, from technologies to tooling to patterns and processes and just things across the board. And I have had to accept that I am often ahead of a curve, and I need to be patient with it and not abandon ship, or recognize that I'm ahead of the curve and maybe don't go there yet. That's the evolution that, as I've really started to apply that thinking to me more as a business leader than just a technology leader, is really understanding product market fit. Just because I see it as creating value, that doesn't matter. It only matters if there's a customer base that recognizes that there's a problem and feels that pain and would really appreciate a solution. There have been multiple times in my career where I've experienced a problem, but some of the things that Bob talked about, I experienced the problem because of how I view the world. doesn't matter how I view the world. It matters how your customers, your team, your market views the world. So really understanding like, okay, cool, Josh, that's great that you think that, but it doesn't mean a hill of beans. No one cares. You can't build a business on that. You can't build a team around that. And really understanding, do other people recognize that this is an issue? Maybe it's just an issue for you. It doesn't matter across the rest of the world, or across the customer base, the industry, the market, or whatever that is. So as Bob has talked about me transforming over the past probably 5 or 6 years into more of a product person, that has been a huge switch for me, is just accepting that I've got nothing but theories, and that's all they are. And the most important thing I could do is go validate or invalidate those with a customer base, being my team, be it actual customers in a market or industry or whatever it is. Go and figure that out and stop assuming that the answer that I have is an answer that actually people need or care about.
All right, I think the last one for me um, is years ago, around 2010, 11. So this was a while back. I was lucky enough to be hired at a company called Eye Contact, which was an email marketing company here in the Triangle where Josh and I live. And I spent about 3 years there. And I met some great people. David Rosh, for example, is someone that I met there. And I've maintained good relationships with quite a few folks that I worked with there over time. And when I joined them as the technology leader, so the software development leader. So I was parallel to the chief product officer, etc. David took a step back. He was in my role, and then he went into architecture and stuff. So it was part of their growing. They were growing and scaling and adding me. Uh, and in 3 years, I've done Agile for, I don't know, 25 years or something. So I know what good looks like. That's not ego. It's not obnoxiousness. I know what I also know what bad looks like, and I've created some bad. I was lucky enough at Eye Contact to create what I think Josh did at the Dude. I did probably in a larger scale at Eye Contact,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and I was incredibly proud of what emerged. The UX teams, how we ideated products, the integration between technology and product and customer support. It was less of a technology agile transformation. It was every aspect of the company. The C-level team was adopting agile thinking and agile processes, and it was a wonderful time for me. We were doing things that um, were novel, new. I could experiment. I could bring new things to the teams, new ideas, and some of them they would entertain, and some of them they would shoot down, etc. And then we were acquired by a company, and I left. I left right before the acquisition was finalized, and that company didn't respect Agile very much, and so I learned one lesson. I learned is it takes time to build a kick-ass high-performance team, and it takes no time at all to destroy a high-performance kick-ass team if you don't know what you're doing. So the acquirer basically demolished what we were doing, and they assimilated with their processes. Uh,
Mm,
the only
that hurts.
solace, the only solace was they were acquired a few years later, and the same thing, and it was an agile company that acquired them, and they got so payback is a problem, or sort of glorious. So they got that payback. But the key thing for me is I failed to. I think everyone at Eye Contact didn't realize how special the instance was, and I failed to communicate. Like they should have talked about. You're not just buying a company. Our value is not just in our domain. Our value is not just in our product. Our value is in how we build our product. Right? It was in our teams. And I don't think I didn't effectively represent the specialness, the uniqueness, the value proposition of Agile in that context. And I should have done a much better job. I should have been involved in the negotiations with the acquiring firm. I should have been defending the instance, not from a defensiveness position, but from the product was never this. That company did not get the value out
Right.
of the acquisition.
Yeah.
They did not. They never got the value, and it wasn't because they got the product, but they didn't get the freaking value.
Yeah.
And that's on them. Shame on them. Shame on our leadership team, but shame on me for probably not communicating how special we were. And that's something that I'm endeavoring to not make that mistake again. Sometimes we need to be braggadocious. Sometimes we need to turn into an Elon Musk, right, or whatever, and really lean into, shaking people up and saying, you have no right. This is a diamond. Realize a diamond, and we say that about products, but I don't know if we say that about teams often enough.
Yeah. And I can speak to that's a real thing. So at Storable, we were acquired by a PE firm out of Europe, and the founders sat me down and we talked through the value of our product driven approach and everything that went into that. And I really helped educate and understand and get them to understand that. And they came back and said, we would not have gotten the multiples that we did on the value of our business. We would not have been acquired for, there's no official number, but if you read the magazine articles and things like that, at a valuation of 2 billion. They said we could not have reached that number without what that organization built. It wasn't just me. There were a ton of amazing, great people there that created this product driven approach. Again, it was not just me. I was a part of the whole thing. There were amazing people that we did amazing things, but that is a real thing. And so part of the value that we brought as a product wasn't just the product. It was the operations that we had built and the team that we had and everything. Exactly. And that made our company worth more. And so we spent real time working with the founders to make sure that they were aware and educated and able to go to the table and get those multiples that were out there. So that's a real thing.
I mean, the proof is in the pudding. It's funny. Again, it's these hindsight things that make me proud sometimes, and I smile. People have gone on from my contact. I can't tell you how many people have gone on, developers, leaders, C-level folks who have become our head of sales has been a multiple CEO in companies. That was a proving ground for high performance excellence. And you want the proof in it. It's not just the acquiring value. It's if you don't exercise that, those folks are going to populate into the universe and they're going to show their value. And that's happened. I've probably seen hundreds of examples of those folks going out there, to their credit. So it matters. Everyone, before we wrap it up, I think we're in a wrap state, Josh. I want to give everyone a heads up. Next week we're going to do something different. The next Metacast, we're doing a conversation. We're having a conversation with Sandy Mamoli and David Mole, and they're from New Zealand, and they wrote a book, and I can get it up here because I don't remember. It's called Creating Great Teams. It's the second edition, and how self-selection lets people excel. So it's really a neat. The first edition was written in 2015, I believe, and so this is like a 10-year update to that excellent book at the time. And self-selection is how do you let teams, the individuals, figure out how to form and storm and norm, etc. But beyond, we're going to talk about the book. We're going to talk about a lot of leadership. But I just love Sandy. Sandy's an ex-Olympian, and she's just super interesting. Both her and David are super interesting people. So I'm looking forward to just the conversation. So that's next week. So
I have a question. If I can do a horrible Australian accent, you think that will land well with folks from New Zealand? Yes.
Yes. Go for it. Go for it.
Yeah. I'm sure it won't blow up in my face.
You going to do it now?
No, I got to save it now.
You save it and practice it. But I'm not going to try. I'm not going to try. What do I got? Shrimp on the Barbie. That's all I've got.
Yeah.
All right. So but everyone, next week, look for that episode. So from beautiful downtown Cary, North Carolina.
And beautiful downtown Fuquay Arena, North Carolina.
I'm Bob the Hitman Galen.
And I'm Josh the Guy Anderson.
All right.
Shake. I gotta get better at that. And bake.
Take care, y'all.
What is wrong with me?
You need a tagline right on the tip of your tongue.